Marlies Zuidam, I'm with fauna architects, and together with Tom van Tuin-Stedenbouw, we work on a lot of regenerative design projects. We have tried to, oh, sorry, I see myself too much. Let's see if I can switch this off. We have tried to, sorry, also some technical things. Yes, that's better. We do a lot of area developments and building assignments in the Netherlands. So sorry for my English because I'm not used to doing this talk in English. And we, I think about 5-6 years ago, we saw that we need to do a few things, actually a lot of things, different in our office with designing, especially aerial developments, but also the building. And then we started to think over regeneratief ontwerpen, as we call it. And we try to, in this way of designing, we try to implement ecological systems at the area and on building level, and it's central for regenerative design. We try to incorporate nature and environment and social aspects into building plans. And that means that we try to at least get on the same level in biodiversity and nature with projects as it is in front of the project, in front of the start of the project. But of course, we mostly try to get it better, to get a better level, to bring something with the project. I'm going to show you steps we use to try to implement this in our work. So you see a lot of projects. I won't get into the project, but I will take you with the steps we try to take in our designing. Like I just said, the traditional thinking we used to do is that we had a plot, then we started thinking over a building, and then we thought, oh God, there's ecological systems around it, we have to implement them in the building. Afterwards, we had designed the building. Actually, I think that most architects unfortunately still do it this way. What we now try to do is we try to say, okay, we have a location, let's think over what's there already in flora and fauna, and design after knowing what's happening in the area and implementing it immediately in your design. So we start with designing immediately with the ecological things are given by biodiversity and things. And then we get a building which is integrated in the landscape better, and where we implement nature inclusivity more better than we used to do that. And that's what we call regeneratief ontwerpen. We also have a few, call it teams we work with to also have to speak with our contractor about the design, the way of designing and implementing these subjects in our design. And actually the scheme you see here on the right side, or on the left side, I'm sorry, is what the regulation in Holland asks for, and we try to make visible what we are doing in a project on the left side. So the more blue the circle gets, the better we actually do, the better the project is. Why should we do that? Well, we hear that in every news item these days, so we all know why we should do it. But what we see is that the policy in Holland, at least, and I think it's worldwide a problem, is that it focuses a lot on CO2 reduction. And of course, that's very important because we should really be aware that we should get things done in this way. But it's not the only solution. We also should talk about what we're talking today, about a lot of more green in the environment, and it will solve a lot of problems we are seeing in the news every day. So, and this is why we actually started with regeneratief ontwerpen in the at first. Actually, Helga already told it, we're mostly thinking in this way, but we should think in this eco way, where the human is in the middle of the ecosystem and not on top, because we're not on top. And this is a very nice image we use a lot to explain that we try to look at our project this way. How do we do this? And I will take you in steps. It starts, of course, with a team. The client, nowadays we get assignments in this way, and people ask us for this approach. But if they're not asking us for this approach, we try to communicate with our client about this in the start, before we put any line on paper. And what is a very different thing, I think, what is the most biggest difference is that we try to attract try to get the ecologists immediately in the team. So before we start designing, we are speaking to ecologists of what's happening in the surrounding and what is good and what is not good for this area, and what should we improve, or what is something which is not working right now, and what could we do better. And of course, it's about an integral process. So everybody needs to join from the start. And that's also, for example, a landscape designer or an architect and an urban designer, but also the people around, like Angelique just also mentioned, talked about. We also think that it's very important to implement the social surroundings and people who are going to use the buildings and live around the buildings or areas where we work on. For us, it starts with thinking about plot limits, and that means that we try to make stepping stones. And that is that, for example, this project is actually around about 5 plots in this area, but we think a lot bigger. So we start with thinking about what is the ecological surroundings, or what is the nature which is the surrounding, and where do we want to attach to. And then we try to get the assignments we have, we try to think over the plot line. So we get a bigger project and we can do more on we can add more green, and the green we add will be more, have more impulse. So this is a zoom in, and actually these are the plots we use, but we're talking now with the municipality about this area and even a bigger part. So you see that it's the
Marlies,
few buildings. Yes.
Excuse me to interrupt you, to be impolite. We have a very tight scheme, and I just wanted to say that we are a bit far in the presentation, almost it's more than halfway, and I see that you still have many slides to go. So
yes, I will go quicker.
Let us keep on track with the scheme and follow you. Thank you.
Yes, good. Well, like said, we start with also knowing the environment in flora and fauna, and that we do in this way. So we make a poster about the soil and everything which is necessary to look good at the biodiversity and ecological situation of a project. The next step is to make an ecological concept. So we have a building concept or an area concept, but we also make an ecological concept. So we can talk with our clients about what we are doing in a very simple way. Sorry, something's going wrong here. In a very simple way, and this also helps us communicate with municipalities easier than talking only about the building concept. We think a lot about the buildings, making them smaller, making smaller private spaces like you see here, and leave a lot of space open for nature, and try to make that nature which is more important, and the private space, keep it more to the house. So it's more part of the house. So you look at a different way of using the private outside space and make it more small, so you have more space for nature. Of course, it's also a lot about the nature of putting things in the building itself, for animals, for green roofs, green walls and things like that, and implementing water systems in the buildings we design. What is also very important is the way of building. We do also a lot with wood buildings, which has less impact in the floor and is built much quicker. So if you work in an ecological environment, we think that it's the right way to build with other building systems. So also building systems has a lot of impact in the surroundings for nature. What's also important, and we just spoke about it, is involving stakeholders in your ideas to take them with you very early in the process. I wanted to tell a bit about this project, but I will skip it probably because it's too long, my story. And what's nice to tell is that in this project, we it's an urban area design, and we put all the buildings with sticks in the floor and looked at the situation itself, if it was okay what we were doing. And this really had impact on the project. And it's actually a method we want to use much more. And of course, it's very important to, when the areas or building are finished, to take the users with you in explaining why you do the things, or why the things are made like they are. Why is nature more wild than and it's not mold? Things like that. Because if they understand why we did things, we can make them enthusiastic, and they will embrace the idea and work with us in also using the area in the right way. I think it's very simple, no rocket science, we just have to do it. So let's do nature inclusive design.
Well, thank you very much, Marlies, for this call. You're actually not only inviting us, but strongly recommend to do and participate in nature inclusive design. I was seeing first reactions already in the chat, so very positive feedback. I wonder, this regenerative design you were talking about, when you are approached by a client and you tell them, yeah, but we do it like this, we try to include nature and so forth and so forth. What's the reaction of the clients to this approach?
Well, it used to be difficult, and why should we do that? We don't need for regulation or things, but now we see that people are very open for it, because of course we have a lot of problems to solve, and everybody reads and hears about it in the news. So it's much more easier for us now. Now we get questions to make climate robust areas, for example. So yeah, now it's common, it's more common, it's more easy. And we also notice that the most difficult thing for us is to get these things done also with governments. And we now also notice that they are very aware of the problems we have to solve together, and that we need each other. So they are also very open-minded now to work with us. It's only very difficult for them to go past policy or things like that. So it's still very difficult to get it done.
Yeah,
in a larger scale.
I think we also, like Helga said in the beginning, and I referred to it like 10, 20 years ago, when this idea of including nature came up, it was especially also with, I think, the colleagues in our architecture field, was like, these are a little bit strange people, what they are doing. And then we had this phase of a hype and a trend. And I think now we have a development which clearly shows us that this is here to stay, because of the benefits we need for the ecosystem and for climate adaptation. From your practice, is there maybe, to conclude, 1, 2, 3 lessons you learned, the top tips, no regrets you would, because we have many designers and architects also in the audience, which you would like to share? What is the golden tip you learned from your experience so far?
Get good ecologists which can speak a bit our language in your team, because that's important. Most difficult, I think, that we have to get through is that we all speak so many different languages in our professions, and the integral designing is very important. So the ecologist has to be on board very early, but it also has to be somebody who can think in another way that some ecologists think really small about one fly, and that's also very difficult. And yeah, policy, of course, policy is also a big item. We should keep also asking governments to join us in this thinking, because that's actually the most difficult right now.
Yeah, I recognize this, and I think many from us recognize this from the practice, that the communication, the understanding each other, your first point, is very valid. I remember talking to Stefano Boeri, whom I know from a park I designed with Inside Outside in Milan. When he designed the Bosco Verticale, he said, I had to learn that I have to take back my ideas so very much. I had to do less architecture. I had to give space to others. And I think, not being an ecologist, that also goes for the ecologist, of course, that it has to be a co-creation, as we heard from Angelique before. Marlies, many thanks for you again for this presentation.